Welcome to the Caregiver Relief Podcast. I'm your host, Diane Carbo, registered nurse, and today I'm honored to sit down with Katherine Jansen-Byrkit, therapist, teacher, and author, who brings her expertise into public health, counseling, and spiritual practice to support those navigating life's hardest challenges. Katherine has dedicated over 25 years to counseling individuals, couples, families, and groups. Her journey is both professional and deeply personal, surviving trauma, food addiction, and a suicide attempt, and transforming those experiences into a powerful calling to help others. In today's conversation, Katherine helps us explore what it truly means to befriend ourselves, how to sustain joy while caring for others, and the practical tools that can move us from surviving to thriving. This episode is sponsored by myvitalvault.net, your all-in-one life organizer for aging adults and caregivers. It's designed to help you securely store your essential legal, medical, and emergency information in one easy-to-access place. Because when a crisis hits, being prepared can make all the difference. Join our Caregiver Relief community, a warm, welcoming space where you can connect with other caregivers, ask questions, share stories, and find support from people who truly understand. Visit community.caregiverrelief.com to join now, because caregiving is one of the hardest and most meaningful things you'll ever do, and no one should have to do it alone. And if this episode speaks to you, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. Every click helps us reach more caregivers who need encouragement, resources, and hope. Welcome, Katherine. Thank you so much for joining us today. My listeners are really going to benefit from your shared stories.
Thank you so much for having me, Diane. I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah. Now, before we dive into self-care and caregiving, can you share a little bit about what first inspired you to blend public health, counseling, and spiritual practice into the work you do today?
Oh, it's such a great question and throws a wide net. I see them so much more as interconnected than even for some people listening might. Counseling is a profession, public health, which also was another career, and working for a health department was a profession. Spirituality is, do we go to church or not? Do we believe in God or not? For me, Diane, all of it is a path, actually, that for me is a spiritual path, but deeply human as part of that spirituality, walking out those different parts of life in deeper and better ways over time. So, public health is not just sanitation, it ends up being about violence prevention and lots of things that people don't even know goes on with public health till I entered that career. But it includes wellness. And it was actually my dad he's passed now. He was a therapist. And because of my early trauma, I started my own therapy journey very young, thankfully. And it was really at 39 years old when I was on a personal retreat that I got the calling of, and I already had a master's degree and I already had a great career in public health. But it was like, guess what? And this was spiritual for me. You are to be a therapist. And I didn't know what the details of that. It was like, what? And for me, spirituality is listening. So I really listened to that and then engaged in a second master's and deciding to do private practice and just bringing a lot of life experience, not necessarily that I talk about it in sessions unless it's appropriate, but just bringing all of those things together for people that are in whatever troubles they are in, whether it's caregiving or going through a change in a relationship or their own health, those kinds of things. Did I answer what you were
Well,
hoping to get to?
your path makes sense
Okay.
when I hear you talk about it, because I'm a nurse.
Yeah.
I help support people as well. I'm a caregiver, and I have one of the rare caregiving sites that has a faith and caregiving section to it. Because while I tell people I'm a recovering Catholic, I'm finding that, and others may not find this, but I find that people of faith no matter what faith, their belief in a higher power, the universe, whatever, have a better time dealing with their journey, their life's journey, let alone their caregiving journey. So I really connect with and understand where you came from when you started that. Makes sense to me, that path that you took. It was a long path for sure. 2 masters, God bless you.
Yeah, my husband was like at this personal retreat, which was really intense, Diane. They were like, this will sound weird. It will sound almost not okay. But when you named your dream, I was in a small group in a large conference, but a small group. So it was like, I think 15 of us. So we were brave and we named it. And then what this group did, Diane, and this again is so odd, they circled me. And instead of saying, you can do it, Catherine, it's okay to have 2 master's degrees. You don't have to know how you're going to pay for it. It's okay that you're still raising children. They did the opposite, Diane, and they did the psychological it was fine. But they said, "No, you don't deserve it. It's too hard. What are you thinking? How do you even know how you?" And I had to find in that moment this really deep yes, I don't have the details and it is okay to go back to school and I don't know, I'll study with I had to find the clarity, not just this like
Yes.
insight or calling. I
Yes.
had to,
Yes.
the force by which I stood in that group, and obviously it was a paid for retreat, and I knew that. When my husband, when I got back home, because it was in California, when I flew back to Oregon, I'm like, guess what, honey? What? How was the retreat? And I'm like, I'm gonna actually change careers, even though we have all these health benefits because I work for the state of Oregon. It's like anything he said was so much less than the group had said. He's like, "Are you
Yeah.
sure?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I got this." So sometimes the universe, I would say,
Yeah.
will give us a test our conviction,
Yes.
test our do you have to have all the answers? I don't believe we do. That's a faith walk. That's a working with the universe. And
Yes.
and that's where it landed. And then that's been 25 years of an incredible journey of working with others and providing support in whatever. It's an artist. Maybe we're working with anxiety. Maybe they are having an existential moment in their life. Maybe they're facing death and dying and they don't. Maybe they're just really alone and they say they're an atheist. So we will talk about not being alone in different ways because their spirituality is their own journey. And I guess that's one of the main messages I'm hoping to share is befriending ourselves is the beginning of undoing aloneness because we tend to think of aloneness as being in the company of another human. But there is a world in which, in the inner world, when we are not alone with ourselves, that now that research tells us that there's actually an attachment process that happens with our relationship to self that you probably know this. Attachment used to be about moms and babies. And then it was like, oh, actually, we all have an attachment style and it's between humans. We'll come to find out there's actually neurodevelopment when we have a strong, loving relationship with ourselves. So when I say I'm having a hard day and myself says, and I am with you, Catherine, I am with you. And maybe I have other people I can call and that can be with me or I can go to church on Sunday, but I am with you. That's the level of befriending ourselves that I speak of and I have tried to manifest on my own.
So how do you begin every day doing so, befriending ourselves in everyday life? How do you start your day?
I actually have a little meditation that ends with is mindfulness, deep breaths. And then I just say to myself, and I do this with most of my clients because I love it, let's just let the mind quiet. But then I add this third piece, which is not mindfulness, which is in your inner world. Imagine taking this stance of loving non-judgment with yourself. So it begins to have this idea of an active, loving relationship to self. So many people have such a critical harsh inner critic, and that's a more clinical and therapeutic journey to understand what that's about. Usually it's about a sense of unworthiness, and the critic is trying to make us do it perfectly and everything right so that we feel good about ourselves or feel lovable. So that's you have to unpack all of that. But just that little mindfulness moment of starting every day in deep connection, not with an agenda or conditions, but a deep connection with oneself means that by 4 o'clock, if that harsh inner critic is showing up, I've already started the day in a loving relationship. and I can begin to work with that dynamic differently and not just surrender to whatever the harsh inner critic is saying inside. So some people have to really face that their relationship with themselves is very unfriendly. And so if they get quiet, it doesn't feel very good inside. They're bombarded with judgment.
Catherine, I think that you just described the majority of family caregivers out there. Because the family caregiver is typically they are one person in the family, and it could be just the spouse, but the one if they have it could be the solo child or someone in the family that has come back to take care of the parents or parent, and they all are judged, they're ridiculed, they're dismissed, they have uninvolved siblings and judgmental extended family members. They feel as if they're a failure if they ask for help. So they really I think that we all have harsh inner critic in us that keeps us trying to be the people pleaser. And instead of pleasing everybody, we try to please everybody but ourselves.
And reversing that, and that actually, not to get again into too many of the weeds and clinical waters, but that is called parts work, Diane. So that when we have a pleaser, person, a critic, a perfectionist, it actually is protecting in a weird way because it's so miserable. It protects from a wounded part of us. So whether I'm in a caregiving role or not, or find myself, somebody wants to divorce me, whatever moment of life, a lot of people come to my practice having never faced this music. They're out living a life externally that they've worked really hard to create happiness, stability, and positive, and that's wonderful. But they've never really sorted with these young wounded parts that then show up in these behavioral patterns or this like harsh inner critic. So the reality is you won't please everyone. If I caregive and you're my sibling, you may have done it differently, but I cannot be beholden to pleasing you because I will often not please you. I might even disappoint you, but I will resent you. And that is unhelpful, I am quite sure, in terms of if we're already under resourced and working hard and making a lot of sacrifices. So it's not about being selfish or narcissistic, but it does start with an orientation of I'm going to have my own standards. I am going to caretake by them. I'm also going to take care of myself so that I can, this is perhaps not a race, but more a marathon. And I will or won't be pleasing others in the way I do this. And that, this is the context of caregiving, but that is deep freedom. Not that I don't care that others have a hard time with the choice I would make, but it can't control me. It can't control me. So that's a tough dynamic you're describing.
Yeah, the hardest part about caregiving is everybody goes back to playing the old family dynamics they were in when they were young. And even though they've been away for maybe decades and are returning home to help out, all of a sudden they're that middle child or they're the oldest child or they're the baby, and everybody else in the family treats them as if they have never been gone or away, and it's really hard. And what happens with is they take more and more on, and they become angry and resentful. And one of the issues that most caregivers, I would say 99.9% of family caregivers, have such terrible chronic stress that it impacts every fiber of their being and it causes illness.
Yeah, yeah. And this idea of if I am a best friend to myself, again, that we're not speaking of narcissism here. We're not speaking of
Right.
selfishness. We are talking about getting real and honest about what it is when we are overly self sacrificing, martyred in any way around that, and become increasingly under resourced. But some people really have to undo their conditioning that if I take care of me, which might mean I take some time for myself, or I might have a boundary, or whatever I need to do to stay healthy and whole, which offers much to my life and does give me a different kind of resourceness. If I don't do that, of course, I'm going to start to falter, if not have some of those human emotions. I would say, Diane, even if one is healthy and whole in a caregiving role, I would imagine there's some complicated feelings that come up. That's what happens for the clients I work with that find themselves in a caregiving role. I can do this and I can keep myself well, but part of me, and this is a way to frame it, part of me is mad about this. This is not what I wanted to do with my 50s, or this is not how I wanted to be in a relationship with my partner or my family member. And it's really important in that friendship with ourselves to know that there are no negative feelings, that we got told years ago there were positive feelings and negative feelings. We're having a human experience. We may be angry, we may be joyful, we may be sad, but if we're already judging a feeling before we can even feel it in the body, and then every feeling has a need, then we've already lost our way just at an emotional level. When I coach people that you're going to be in this role, lots of feelings are going to come up, and you're going to need to take that stance of non-judgment and curiosity with these emotions. Beyond just self-care, it's going to be an emotional journey, and it may be uncomfortable, some of these feelings, but not to feel guilty about them. Does that make sense? Does that ring
Oh,
a bell?
absolutely. And I will tell you, guilt is what makes caregivers act and respond. People are very good at making a fair family caregiver feel guilty. Now they choose to feel guilty. And that's how do they overcome that? They have most family caregivers don't identify their own limitations or set boundaries. And then they feel guilty when they don't meet the expectations of everybody around them.
So if we already like layer what we've spoken of, like I have this part of me that has pleased others to secure love and or that's just now my habit. But realizing that now I'm in this role, which is exhausting and taxing in so many ways, and I actually really need to have boundaries that may or may not align with somebody else's boundaries. I'm not going to do 24/7, 365. I don't have the answers for what makes up the difference, but I'm just not going to do that. No, you're the one who doesn't have kids. No, you're the one who lives close by. So it's again, if you hadn't done this before, that is a tough pill to swallow. To have a boundary when I've never learned how to have boundaries and not please others, when my very survival and the quality of this caregiving experience is deeply affected by either having those boundaries or not having them. What I do with one of the things that is fun to talk about, because guilt is one of those, like a negative emotion. It isn't actually a negative emotion, nor is regret. It's different than shame. I would delineate that shame is when we feel bad about ourselves as a human, like I'm a bad person, versus guilt or regret about something that happened or something I did or didn't do. Guilt and regret, when it's clean in a way, when it's appropriate, help us to be our most evolved self. That's why we don't want to say they're a problem emotion. But here's the question I ask anybody that says, I feel guilty. I literally say, then you have to name for me what you did wrong. So tell me what you did wrong, because you may have. And that's why guilt is our friend. If I cut somebody off on the freeway, I'm going to feel a little guilty. I scared them and I'm going to change my behavior. I befriend guilt because it's here to help me be my most conscious self. But if I can't name something and I just feel guilty because I have a boundary, then it's no, you didn't do something wrong. So somebody can guilt trip you, but only if there's a part of you that resonates with that. Like you said, Diane, no one makes us feel. We have feelings. And just watching those strategies of others of guilt tripping as a manner of control or whatever else it would be, that's the maybe opportunity in a caregiving role. I'm going to inadvertently do some personal work, and some of my relationships are going to be affected by a new way of being that is necessary for me, but ultimately serves a greater good in my life.
Yes. Catherine, I actually recommend to every family caregiver out there to create a family caregiver contract. I know my caregivers, every time I say it, roll their eyes and say that's awful, but I really believe every caregiver has to look at their caring for their loved ones as a job. And in that role as a job, they have time off, they have vacations, they have they have that way, if there's other people in the family, they can say, "I will care for you until you become." If I can't deal with incontinence, providing intimate care, I can no longer do that. somebody else is going to have to take over or you're going to have to be placed. I also tell them to think about things like if your loved one becomes agitated or aggressive or sexually inappropriate. These things happen when you're caring for a loved one who may have dementia or other illnesses or even hallucinations and delusions. So you really have to put things on paper. But what it also does is it sets limits, it sets boundaries, and it also sets expectations for the extended family members and siblings to help support those downtimes. They either go physically to the home and provide that support while you're off on the days you request off, or they financially contribute to help get help in the home. I think that's
I love that. I
you
love
know
that.
what? I think this is a really good way for caregivers to stand up for themselves. We looked at this and we wrote it down, and this is what I can and cannot do. And that way, they are, if it's in writing, they have something that justifies their wanting time off, their downtime, and stuff like that.
It's a beautiful idea as it's so concrete because of course it's a job and that of course it's a role and that I think the naivete of it's just all about love is yeah, guess what? That there's a shadow side that can be pretty shadowy actually. Yes,
Yeah.
it's driven by I love this person, but the way to actually have love as an experience, continue to be in the room is to make sure those prevention pieces are there because all of a sudden I don't actually feel so loving when I feel like I don't have a choice. I'm alone. My needs don't matter. There's not as much love in the room. So it's the choice is generated by love, but the scaffolding around the role and the job protects the love, I would say. And people can be very in my case, I don't just work with caregivers, of course, but in
Right.
the different cases I've had, they can be very naive. It'll be fine. I'll ask help for help when I need it. Everybody understands the situation. And your idea is maybe, but maybe your idea of time off is really different than my idea of time off. So I love that. I love
Well,
it.
the average caregiver makes promises that they have no idea what they're agreeing to. "I'll never put you in a nursing home. I'll never do this." And when in fact, there are times when they're going to have to step back and say they can't continue to do this role because of the behaviors or the situation has trained and that or has changed. And that's really hard for family caregivers to accept as well.
Yes. And I've had a recent case where it went on for so much longer than it should have, and now the parent is in a facility and actually doing better and well, which often is the case. But it was this like, if I move in, don't ever put me away. So
Yeah.
this has so deteriorated, but the narrative is I have so failed my parent, and it could be partner, it could be child.
Yeah.
When actually, probably if you're beyond what your capacity is to provide care, that is what is failing them, much less that you are a human and your needs matter as well, and the rest of your life. And so I love that coaching, that idea that be very light touch around futuristic promises because you've got to be there's this idea of direct experience that's an Eastern philosophy, but that's how we know ultimately what's true. We can have good guesses, but till you're living it, you don't know always how sustainable something is. So maybe it's I can do this for 6 months to 12 months and then we will check in and we will see if this is still a sustainable choice or if we need to tweak anything. Something like that is just built in, like you say, like a job.
Yeah. Most caregivers don't understand that the average journey for caregiving is 6 to 7 years, and some go as long as 20. And that's a long time. I had one lady, I tell this story. One lady called me, she's 75. She just turned 75, and I've been helping her with her mother's 104 and doing really well. She finally
Oh,
calls me up one day after multiple sessions trying to make this decision. She says, "I've decided I'm putting my mom in assisted living. I've been caring for her for 25 years and I need to start living my life." She goes, "I'm 75. I don't know if I'll live as long as mom." And she says, I need to start living my life now. And I thought, oh my Lord, it was a long time for her. And it took her that long to get over all those feelings. She wasn't going to put her away. She wasn't going to do those things. And she finally had to say, Mom, you have to be placed somewhere because I need to have some freedom and a chance to enjoy my life while I'm still on earth. The ironic thing is, mom's having a great time in assisted
Well, of course,
living.
and that's what we often find because that projection and anything we don't have direct experience around can be an projection is those places are lonely and awful and you have poor care and when actually and not everybody can afford the nicer places and that is very much a real thing, but where care is just solid, doesn't even have to be high-end stuff. Mostly people thrive because now they're not isolated. Now they're experiencing maybe more nutrition because I don't cook. I would be a terrible person as a caregiver in terms of trying to get nutritional stuff in. And I would offer that that person 25 years into finally showing up, Diane, for herself
Yeah.
and the many feelings, including potentially shame. Does this mean there's a thing called confirmation bias? Does this mean I'm a bad person? Does this mean I don't love this human? Does this mean I need to sit in a room with some protest behavior that could include I'm really mad at you or whatever it is, or I'm in a pout? When that hard choice is made, that's a bravery. And some people really relate to the idea of if I don't make this choice, I'm actually abandoning myself. And that's not good for anybody too, even the person I'm taking care of, because I can't transcend the feelings that come up like resentment if I'm in a self-abandoned place. So there's befriending ourselves all the way to abandoning ourselves.
Yeah.
And how good again that you are a resource for people on that really tough journey of making choices that maybe no one will support in that family system.
You'd be surprised how many caregivers, when they're trying to make that decision or put themselves first,
Yes.
they it literally takes some people 2 or 3 years to get to the point where they finally take that step. And I know 2 of the 3 that I can specifically talk about, 2 of the caregivers actually became seriously ill and died right after they placed their parent in a nursing home or assisted living.
Of course. And that's a journey too, Diane, of how many symptoms and cues do we wait for? Because I would contend that we get cues and there are symptoms, and sometimes they're subtle. It's like our intuition, or for some of us, that's the universe. That's a sense of the divine speaking to us. And then the slide projector, then the slide goes around. Okay, you're ignoring this. More consequence, a little bit of the cue. Did I listen? Did I not? I ignored it. More consequence. So by the time I finally make the choice, I can't prevent then potentially consequences that could have been prevented before. But that sense of listening deeply, so people listening that don't identify as spiritual like you and I do, that's okay. We all have intuition, however we would define it. It's not our mind going pros and cons. It's not just emotions. It's a deep inner voice. And if we can listen to that voice, and it won't always make sense in lots of ways, but it often is our deepest guide, then we're listening to those more subtle cues and getting ahead of stuff. If I put my person in a home and they can't even leave their room now, they never did get to make friends there because we waited too long. Or in your case, where these people actually passed, they never had that reclaiming of their life.
Yeah.
To back that decision up as early as possible through this idea of listening to our intuition. And intuition often will come through when we're healthy physically. If I'm sleep deprived, if I overdrink, if I am not physically healthy, my tuning fork is not very good. And that tuning fork is what is trying to help me to understand a change is afoot. Something different is trying to happen. So that's going from surviving to thriving is not just self-care so I can caretake, but self-care so that I can have a deep inner knowing and attunement when I need to have those messages.
Catherine, 63% of family caregivers become seriously ill or pass before the person they're caring for. That's how much how stress begins. And they don't understand that the headaches they're feeling, the body aches, the poor eating because they're not taking care of themselves. They're shoving food down their throat that probably isn't healthy for them. They're not taking time to sit and have a good meal. There's so many things that contribute to this stress, and they're always in this fight or flight mode. And after a while, I hear ones that tell me, I don't even have time to get into the shower or take a bath. And I'm like, oh, you have to make time. And
Well, and yeah, to be respectful, but in a gentle way. What's wrong with this picture? And is that actually true?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I will tell you, and I know this will upset some of my listeners, but the caregivers eventually get into this victim mode and get a victim mentality. They feel like they don't have choices or any way to overcome their situation when in fact they really do. And that's frustrating because trying to break that thought process or that attitude of I'm the only one that can do this or I'm the only one that can do it. They get into that where they get to a point where somebody will say, "Can I help you?" And they'll say, "Oh no, I've got it all." Or if they do allow the person to help, the one of the biggest things I have a hard time with, and I tell them, "Don't do this," is let the person provide the care in the way they want to provide it. Just because it isn't done just exactly like you want doesn't mean it's not going to have the same end result. And
I
many caregivers have this attitude, if it's not done their way, then don't do it. And they literally push help away. And
and
that's sad.
sabotage. It's really sad and it's unnecessary. I would imagine those dynamics, which are complex for some people, because again, they've never faced, oh, victim mentality. What does that mean? You're not a victim of your circumstances. And and they can be very tough circumstances. We have to be careful of that because of resentment and martyrdom and a kind of, I don't have a choice, a non empowered position. Now, this might be really radical for your listeners, but what if every day, not only in a mindfulness moment, they begin with deep connection to self and have a day that includes nurturing themselves? But part of that initial moment is, I have a choice. And they may think, Catherine, you're being ridiculous. I had a choice. I have a choice to live or die. I attempted suicide. We have choices. And that means we have to take responsibility for our choice. And that while it's like, then I can't misuse my victimhood to whatever, how it could be misused, own it. It doesn't mean it's an easy choice, but the energy of choice versus the energy of non-choice and being trapped in something is obviously completely different. And that's a key. And like, it was a very different context, of course, but I had a choice to listen to becoming a therapist or not. I didn't know the details. I really didn't. They were overwhelming. But we don't have to know how a different choice. Sometimes we get into this, I have to have it all figured out if I make a different choice. It's no, this is a choice to do this. And the choice not to do this, we would just begin to say, that's actually what I'm going to need to do. And then be patient and maybe elicit supports around brainstorming. How do I walk this out if I were to make a different choice? But initially, it's just what you're speaking of. It's getting out of that mindset of victimhood. It's also the control piece of you're not in control, but that doesn't mean you're helpless and you're surrendered, like Surrender Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. It's more this seeing that control is often about fear and ego. And that is really unhelpful to thriving versus surviving. And you're going to fold the towels differently. That person had frozen yogurt after lunch, and we don't normally do that on Fridays, but that you got your break and you're not alone, but let other people tribe with you in this ultimately can feel really good if we can let go of that control and ego.
How do people I always tell the caregivers they need to practice self-care, but what does that actually mean? And what are all the different ways it can be looked at? Because caregivers say to me, self-care, I don't have time for that. I think sometimes just waking up and starting with a day of an attitude of gratitude and a moment of mindfulness or prayer can get you started on the right foot.
Self care generally, kind of old school ideas of self care were a massage, going to a fun movie, maybe going for a walk. And those things can really restore. So think about, we are talking about under-resourced people or potentially under-resourced people. It's not just it feels good to do those things. It is keeping us healthy and whole. I do now, I so love that you started that way, that the inner world, how can I take care of myself inside? What am I saying to myself? How do I practice a kind of inner kindness? That is a way to have a positive, loving, self care kind of world. Like self care is giving ourselves boundaries. Self care is letting myself have the feelings I'm having. Self care is the idea that I get a choice. Those are psychological and emotional things. That's not that, because you can go out and get a massage or you can have your vacation. But if you're taking your unhappy, mean to yourself with you on that trip or during that massage, how good do you feel on the other side? Do your body got cared for? So I think it's good to throw a wide net of loving oneself and taking care of oneself as a choice and an action that is not narcissism, to listen for all the ways we need care. For some people, it's actually wounded working maybe with a therapist and seeing that there's a lot inside that has never been attended to. Loving myself is getting a professional involved and realizing I never dealt with that trauma. I just thought it could stay on that third shelf, but I realize it's actually driving some of my life through patterns or even through my relationship with myself. Yeah, I think of, and people know themselves sometimes also over time, what did really feel supportive and helpful might not. So be open to it changing over time. Like for some people, it's, oh, I'll go see my friends. Maybe now that feels more draining, not to be antisocial, but maybe you do need more solitude, but that's a new thing for you. Does that make sense that as we evolve and over time, what self-care is for us is
Yeah,
different?
and one of the things I encourage every family caregiver to do is to create what I call a care team partner support group and surround yourself with people that will provide you with practical assistance, like the pets. Does somebody need, can somebody help with the pets? Does the yard work need to be done? Is there a family member that can help you with medication management? Can they call the pharmacy? Is there somebody else that can look into community resources that are available out there? There's a variety of different things that you can use to take care of yourself by getting some breaks and respite care through practical assistance of somebody helping you, and I think that's really important as well. It's self-care in a different way, but it assures you, it allows the caregiver to have a break to from everything. Ask somebody, "Can you bring in a meal once or twice a week?" Or, "Hey, can you sit with dad while for an hour or so, so I can go to the gym every day?" There's different ways that you can get practical assistance and support yourself. That I think is self-care as well.
Yes, thank you for adding that piece, that beyond just the direct activities that are nurturing to oneself and having the boundaries to be able to have that time, that actual time and space, that it often enough will require that somebody that we ask for help. So maybe Diane, to pause for a minute and just acknowledge that in this culture, I would say, in my experience of it as a 62-year-old woman, but also as a clinician, that we have adopted this idea of fierce independence as like the North Star. It is actually, I believe, a trauma response. There's a very uninteresting because codependence is also in a way pathological and is problematic. But there's this middle path, it's called interdependence, which is again a very uninteresting little phrase. But fierce independence means that if I do something that is not independent, that if I am not fully self-reliant, then I have a shame attached to that. So asking for help, having a need, I really believe we need to undo the cultural conditioning around that, maybe family conditioning too, that asking for help is brave, asking for help is wise, asking for help is not shameful. But people may, hearing this, may have to realize that they're going to have to move through some of those feelings initially to be like, oh, this is really hard for me to do. It's not that they would say no necessarily, it's that I'm the barrier to asking for help. You're nodding. That resonates?
Well, I know the baby boomers are fiercely independent. They want to be. And I know that the caregivers that are taking care of them are see themselves as fiercely independent. And it's going to break them because they push themselves way more. We have lost our sense of community. You used to grow up and everybody in your family lived within a 25 or 50-mile radius of where you were born, and now people are from families are all over the world, or not even on the other side of town, they're in another state. So we've really lost our sense of community. And I think with social media and everything that's going on, we don't have our communication skills are being challenged as well because everything's so public. People put pictures up of what they've eaten every day.
There is a kind of, and being our own sense of self, of course, is important.
Yeah.
But I would say this kind of heavy duty individualism. And if we really look at indigenous, why do we have a need developmentally that is a belonging need that's different than I need to know I am lovable and I need to know I am worthy? I actually need to belong. We have mirror neurons, interconnectivity. What happened during the pandemic? What happens when babies not are fed but aren't touched? It's because of connection. And so going back to, which I actually think there's much more of a movement around understanding we actually really need each other. We belong to each other. We need each other. And if you actually are lucky enough to have, if you're alcoholic, you get to go to AA. There's a group. If you're a caregiver in Portland, Oregon, there are caregiving groups you get to go. So you get to have this, like, how I got here is because of this thing we share. But the being here is about being in a circle, being in community, having that sense of, again, tribe around our experience. So I love that we're naming this, and I would imagine that's a theme for you that you talk about with people.
Oh, yeah. Most caregivers feel most comfortable being online instead of in person. And because they feel like they have time overwhelm and they inability to add anything extra to their schedule because they're trying to take many caregivers are not only taking care of their aging parents or an aging friend or relative, but they're also many of them are taking care of children, teenage children, because they're in that they're the sandwich generation where they waited to have babies so much later in life. So now they've got teenagers at home with parents and they're running two households. So it's very challenging for them. And that's why I really encourage that support group, the care team partner support group as well. So
Exactly. And even that, for example, maybe all of a sudden I'm in this role. I swallowed some lemonade, or our family just were very independent. I've been socially isolated. I didn't realize how much I need others. That is, if I already don't have a lot of time and now I need to re-engage in relationships, but I have neglected relationship. I neglected the importance of relationship in our lives. That's, again, not an impossibility, obviously, but that more challenging. I sometimes give people little nuggets of, okay, so you feel really alone. You let your friendships go by the wayside. You don't have a lot of time. What would it be like to be just a little bit courageous and just name that with this friend? Not with shame, but just, I have missed you. We've fallen out of step with each other. I would really love to re-engage in any way if this resonates for you, whatever that could look like. If I got that text from somebody I'm out of touch with 5 or 10 years ago, that would mean the world to me. And so sometimes it's hard for people to, if the waters aren't warm, put their toe in. Just but we often have relationships, some of which that are a little out of date that could become current pretty fast.
yeah. The majority of family caregivers, I tell them their outside relationships are like a garden. It needs water and sunshine, and you are the water and sunshine in that relationship. And so many at the end of their caregiving journey are exhausted and have no one to support them or help them through recovering from their journey because they have neglected those relationships. And I think that's when I really encourage the support group, the caregiver support, care team partner support group, as well as just finding time to make time for yourself for those outside relationships.
And you can see the map of this. That's why I love your contract idea, because I'm going to take care of myself. I also need to, maybe I do have a spiritual community, and that's its own part of myself in life. Then there's just my friendships to keep rich, and not one and not two. That person could pass, that person could move, to not be so limited, and then not to be apologetic about, I don't need 5 hours today every day to take care of myself and to attend to those relationships. But attachment, going back to the ideas of a human attachment, consistency is more important than how much time I can go on that friend weekend. Maybe don't go on the friend weekend, but can you have lunch? Can you have a something? And having it be small enough to be manageable and then more regular is a way we get out of neglect. A little bit of water, a little bit of sunshine, maybe on those flowers. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things caregivers really have a hard time with is talking about anything other than they want to talk about their issues. Oh, dad's driving me crazy. We're having all these issues when they need to be talking about something else, what they want to do or make a plan, or just to be grateful to be able to get out and have a human contact with somebody other than the person they're caring for.
Yes, and sadly, if I'm your only break and you needed to vent and you needed to, over time, I'm going to remember that when we have lunch, you're downloading a lot of stuff, and not to not mention it, of course, because that would be
Yeah,
avoidant. But that is the role of a therapist or a support group. That's where that stuff needs to get channeled, because the whole focus is, this is really hard and it's taking up a lot of air. So once some of that gets released, then it doesn't, in a different social context, have to take up so much space. And then that's, yeah.
yeah. Because I think that it's important that if you wanna play pickleball, or you go to jazzercise, or you line dance or whatever, try to make it a regular activity for you as a caregiver to get out, because it just gives you the oxygen and the energy to continue on your caregiving journey.
Exactly. And one piece I'm working with right now personally, that's just this aging, using intuition, and then seeing what's next. So part of food addiction for me was, I went from 120, and it's not really about weight, but it was just so dramatic. In 3 months, I went from about 120 pounds to 200. I was literally unrecognizable in my high school. No one bullied me. I was just so deeply in shame. So even before that and during that, at 12 years old, I started running. I was first generation. It wasn't about athleticism. I wasn't about going out for track. I did do that, but I started running, and my mom and dad were like, "Fran, who is this human being that's going for these runs?" So movement. So I'm giving up running after 50 years on December 2nd, not because I have an injury, not because I need a surgery, just I know that this body needs now not impact like that. So I'm grieving. There was fear that came up. My old eating disorder stuff came up, but I knew, and I didn't engage in those behaviors. Moving into, it's non-negotiable that Catherine moves, but it is negotiable about how she moves. And so if you're not just taking care of our relationships, not just working through our relationship with ourselves, but nutrition and movement being critical pieces, gentle movement. I'm just thankful that you're naming that, and that there's so many things out there now. And I do Mia now because I love to dance and I love music. I mostly just do it online because I can just great teacher in Colorado, and I do her time change, and we do it Tuesday, Thursday. So there's so much available now where you don't have to physically go. You don't have to join the gym. Maybe there isn't line dancing anymore, or it's at night. Yeah. But to have it be non-negotiable, and some people, I say, "Do you negotiate whether you brush your teeth?" And they look at me and I said, "That's how movement needs to be." You can have
Yeah.
days off differently than brush your teeth, but as soon as it's like, I'm exercising and then I have an off-on switch, then you will have an off switch. And in these kinds of roles, that's part of staying resourced and part of dealing with that stress you were talking about earlier, the cortisol.
Yes, I encourage every family caregiver to try to get outside, even for a few minutes
That
every day.
too.
Stick your head out, take some fresh air into your lungs,
Love
feel the
it.
sun, feel if you're in I've lived in Minnesota and now I'm living in Myrtle Beach. Feel that heat of that sun or feel that ocean breeze or stick your head out and get icicles on it.
Nature. I love it. Nature, we're learning more and more about like relationships. We need nature. It's not even about the inactivity in nature. Yes. So good.
About connecting with the earth. It just connecting with helps ground you and makes you feel that you're part of something bigger. At least it does for me. And it's also a time for me to do my positive self-talk or whatever, or to set goals for the day. And I think that's really important too, so that I'm a list maker. And I encourage everybody, write down what you need to accomplish. What are your priorities for the day? Maybe it's you got to get dad into the shower and it's going to take all day. Or you can do bathing without a battle and bathe little bits of him all day long while he's in the bathroom or he's eating or whatever. There's all kinds of ways that you can get a person clean without having to throw him in a shower, but it's having you change your perspective and you change your life. And
Exactly. And having that intentionality. One thing that is just as kind of a curiosity. Politics and the environment never used to be part of therapy. I've done 25 years. So I've seen a lot of kind of cultural things. There are 3 diagnoses now that are associated with environmental anxiety because what is happening on the planet, much less how disconnected we are, that's actually in the DSM now, which is really wild. Probably politics will be at some point, and I'm not making a political statement, but how it feels when the world feels I feel separate from the world or I don't feel safe in the world and how that plays in our nervous system. And so those things to be acknowledged too in terms of what a caregiver as a human being just on the planet at this time, what they're carrying. So I love your just stick even your head out because it's that fresh air and remembering that we're part of an ecosystem,
yeah.
our mammalness, our animalness.
Yeah. I just think that caregivers have to make time for themselves every day, and I hear a million excuses why they can't or won't. And so that's it's important that I encourage them to do things that make them feel good every day. And if because so many feel depressed or tired, hey, putting your head out, you'll wake up, you'll see the sun, maybe feel, I know I have seasonal affective disorder. So I'm happy in Myrtle Beach because there's so much sunlight. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it was overcast all the time. So I struggled. And one of the things that surprised me, when I moved to Minnesota, I lived there for 10 years in Burnsville, Minnesota, how bright and sunny it was every day there. Even in the most bitter cold days, it was bright and sunny. And I thought, that was my first realization, oh my Lord, the sun does exist.
The sun does exist, and there's really something to that. What I also have really seen squared is because warmth and sunshine are when people go outside. Some of seasonal affective disorder is that we stop going, oh, it's daylight savings time, so now it's too dark. It's like you need to be outside. And it is helpful when it's sunny, but it's also the outdoors. I think there's a piece that will emerge from research around that. But how those are really simple things. That doesn't change a situation, but taking responsibility for our health and wholeness within any situation is that empowered choice place, not victim. I'm just stuck here, kind of increasingly under resourced, which would create depression and further fatigue, all the things. Do you feel like before I know we're close, but I want to just ask you, are you feeling like you're getting from me what you were hoping in terms of your listeners and attending
Oh,
to those
yeah, I think
prompts?
yes,
Okay,
absolutely. I
good.
really do. Caregivers are struggling, Catherine, and they just need to hear that it's okay to take care of yourself. You do need to set boundaries and limits, get that caregiver contract in place, get outside to fight your depression and your the other thing is they have high expectations of other people and they get frustrated because and this is an old family dynamics play, I can ask somebody, "Can you do this for me?" And they'll say yes, and then they don't do it. Or they'll say, "I can't do it then, I have to do it on another day." Then you have to try to be flexible. But the other thing is caregivers want to be able to ask somebody once for something and hope that they'll continue, and it doesn't work that way. People need to have frequent conversations. Caregivers feel like they're bothering somebody, or they've been told, "Don't nag me." Yes, it's not nagging, it's making a request. If you want your brother to come over to your parents' house to get the trash out every Thursday, and he misses the Thursday, it's okay to call him up and say, "Hey, are you coming or not?" People and caregivers have to understand that you have to ask somebody more than one time.
Sometimes you yes, and I guess what I would offer is we have to be careful that a request lives in us as an agreement and does not live in the other person as an agreement. Request has a yes or no answer. So I think the clarity of I am now making this like I'm invested in every Thursday you're doing that. Is that what I'm hearing you say? There's a communication piece of reflecting back. Because somebody could be like, "Oh, yeah, I can help on Thursday." "Oh, you meant every Thursday? You meant indefinitely?" That's not how it lives inside of me. And here we go again with a missed dynamic in that relationship. I love that you're saying flexibility. That's just a psychological thing too. We need to be able to pivot. We need to not be practicing self-perfectionism or perfectionism with others. And if we get to have boundaries, guess what? Others get to have boundaries. When my parents passed and in their journey, I have 4 sisters. I did what I needed to do. I showed up as the daughter I needed to show up in. It was not my job to I had to do 10 ties. What any of my sisters were doing, I could have gone there. "Oh, you're doing a lot," or, "Oh, you are not doing enough." That's not that would have compromised my sisterhood, and we all did pretty well with that, and some of us did more and some of us did less. What I came to is I've gotta be in integrity with what is right for me and not pay attention to what others are doing, and that did protect those parents are past now, but we never had and then if I can't do it and none of my 4 sisters are going to step up to the plate to do that Thursday garbage, that's when we have a conversation about we need supplemental support. We need
Mhm.
supplemental support because I get to have boundaries, but you get to have boundaries.
Absolutely.
Mm.
I really appreciate your information today. I think it's very enlightening to my listeners out there. How do they find you?
HarborGlowHolistic.com is my overall website. You can buy I published a book on these kinds of ideas in 2019. My husband's a chiropractor, so obviously people are from all over and he's semi-retired now, but he's on that website. But that's one place. And I do not like a newsletter all the time, but a couple times a year I will send out a community kind of share on these kinds of ideas, different things. I saw a dolphin on the beach in Costa Rica recently and it died with all of us right near it. So I did it was so beautiful. We were like little death doulas. I've never seen a dolphin on a beach. I didn't know what to do because it was alive. So there's that. I only can see people in Oregon. That's my jurisdiction as a therapist. But my book, reaching out, being part of my wakefulness community, I'd love any of your audience to connect with me that way.
Great. I'll put all those contacts in on the
Okay.
site and in the show notes. To my family caregivers out there, you are the most important part of the caregiving equation. Without you, it all falls apart. So please learn to be gentle with yourself and practice self care every day because you are worth it.